With cyber attacks grabbing global news headlines and governments across the world pumping billions of dollars into cyber weapons and cybersecurity, is modern warfare moving online? According to NATO, for example, cyber attacks are becoming more common, sophisticated and damaging. So how worried should we all be by the rise of new digital armies? Joining me to discuss this are Hector Monsegur, the hacker formerly known as Sabu, who once led the notorious hacking group LulzSec. Today he's the director of the cybersecurity firm Rhino Security Labs. And from Helsinki, Mikko Hypponen, a self-described hacker hunter and chief research officer of F-Secure, a leading cybersecurity firm. Thanks both for joining me in the arena. Let me begin by asking you both. This is a really complex issue. US President Donald Trump spoke recently about the cyber, and he said it was a huge problem. How do you even define what we're talking about? What is cyber warfare, Hector, in your view?
Well, my personal opinion, cyber warfare is something that has not been defined yet. I mean, you could go to Wikipedia and get a general idea of what it is, but we don't really know. There's no way to put it. There's no simple, easy answer here. There are no borders on the internet, as far as we can see. So how do we define warfare on the internet? There are skirmishes, there are little conflicts, and there are many examples that hopefully we could discuss today. But in terms of when it comes down to government to government rather, you have incidents, you have indicators, you have potential compromises, leaks and dumps and all that good stuff. But the main problem that we have is attribution. We don't really know where these attacks are coming from. We could guesstimate, a lot of security companies do that, but at the end of the day, there's no clear answer.
Mikko, is that a view you share, that it's difficult, A, to define what is an act of war online and to identify the perpetrator of that act?
The way I look at cyber warfare is that cyber, or computers and online systems, are yet another new domain for warfare. Just like we had land war, sea war, air war, space war, and now cyberspace war. And I don't actually believe that we will see cyber war or a future war which would be a cyber war. I think it's going to be one of the elements that will be used in conflicts. And most of the things that we see today labeled as cyber war have nothing to do with war. Most of the stuff governments are doing online today is actually about espionage. It's not about waging war, it's about stealing information.
In all the other types of war that we talk about, whether it's land-based war, air war, etc., people die. Is there a sense that cyber war we're less worried about because it's not killing people directly?
Well, if you look at what's been happening over the last months in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, there actually are examples of people dying. There are multiple reports of Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian artillery soldiers, with their mobile phones getting infected by Russian malware, which has then been used to pinpoint their geolocation, after which there's been artillery fire from the Russian side to their locations. So basically what's happening here is that Ukrainian soldiers are dying because their phones got infected by a piece of malware. And that's as close to cyber war that I can think of. That really is something that we should be calling cyber war.
Let's be very clear here for the viewers. When we talk about cyber attacks, when we talk about people hacking governments or companies, this is not just the Chinese intelligence service or the Russian FSB or the CIA. This is private individuals,
it could be
regular civilians,
absolutely,
non-state actors.
Yeah.
You yourself, in a previous life, were a hacktivist. You led the infamous LulzSec hacking group. I believe you've personally hacked the Chinese government and the Tunisian government during the Arab Spring. What made you want to do that? What motivated you to do that?
Well, I was at a different point in my life. I felt like I wanted to do something good, right, quote unquote. There, I felt like I was in the right direction. Unfortunately, that was not really the path. In hindsight, now that I've grown more and I've evolved a little bit more, I totally see the wrong there. But at one point in my life, look, I was this random kid from the projects that was involving myself in the middle of a Tunisian revolution.
You went from being a hacker to actually working with the FBI, with the authorities, to protect the US government from cyber attacks. How effective were you in that role?
Well, in the position I was in, essentially you would say I was kind of in the middle of all the noise, right? All the signal traffic. And everyone just kept sending me messages, or messages were basically flying through my screen. And during that small time period, we're talking about less than 8 months, we did stop over 300 cyber attacks against the US and other international assets, 3 of which were national security. So it was pretty effective. And even before I was arrested, the FBI were already doing exactly this.
Yeah.
They had moles all over the place.
Well, let me put that point to Mikko in Finland, who is all about cybersecurity. Mikko, when you look at the threats that are out there every day, what proportion of the threats online are coming from governments? How big is the threat from governments versus non-state actors, versus people like Hector in a previous life?
Well, we have completely different groups of attackers. I mean, the hacktivists, clearly one group. Then the criminals who want to make money is clearly another group. Then we have governments, and we probably also have extremists as an upcoming risk, which really isn't something we would have seen many examples of. And when we look at the amount of attacks, we see it's an overwhelming majority is coming from the criminals. On a typical day, our research labs receive around 400,000 malware samples, and we estimate that over 98% of those are coming from organized online crime groups, which are trying to make money. So it's actually very rare to be hit by a governmental attack. But when it happens, it's very, very serious, because criminals are fairly democratic with their attacks. They target everybody. They don't really care who you are if they can get your credit card. But when a government wants to gain access to your system, they're not interested into anyone else, and they're willing to use much stronger methods to gain access. So it's very serious, but it's also very rare.
A lot of people watching at home will be wondering 2 things in terms of their own lives. Number one, how vulnerable are things like power grids, utility companies, traffic and transportation systems that ordinary people depend on every day? How vulnerable are they to an act of cyber war? And 2, how vulnerable are they personally in terms of their emails? How easy is it to get into people's emails and crack their passwords?
Well, from my personal experience, I got to see, and I got to even connect to my previous life, industrial systems. I got to see how easy it is. It is to connect. In some cases, or in most cases, a lot of these systems are installed with default passwords straight from the manual, and usually it's just 4 zeros. That's just reality.
Wow.
But not just that, there's it's always a human element. There's always a weakness to every infrastructure, and it's always the human. Regardless of how secure an environment is, there's always a way to exfiltrate information, especially if there are people inside that are a little bit nefarious, or even when it comes down to your personal security. It's very easy for an attacker to get your information, whether it's by social engineering, whether it's by hacking into a third-party website and simply downloading a password that you use everywhere, and just log into your bank account and go from there.
Mikko, one final question to you. Are we in the beginning or in the middle of a Cold War-style cyber arms race?
We just got out of the last arms race, which was the nuclear arms race, which lasted 60 years. It seems that we are now jumping to the next arms race, and that will be the cyber arms race. And it might go on for the next decades, maybe for the next 60 years. And it's going to take a very long time until we get to talk about things like, rules of cyber war or laws of cyber war, or about things like cyber disarmament. So we are in the beginning now.
Hector, Mikko, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. That's our show. UpFront will be back next week.